Hey, podcast friends. This is Dr. Steve Hewlett with the podcast, Simple Healthy Choices for Weight Loss, where every week we help people who have realized that as their health has been declining over the years, the number of medications they are being prescribed is increasing. We want to help you reverse this health path so you can live the vibrant, pain-free, and hopefully medication-free life you deserve to live. If you'd like even more information on this topic, you can go to Amazon or Audible and pick up my book, Your Plate is Your Fate. And if you think my book helps you on your new health path, please tell your friends and leave a review where you purchased it. Hey, welcome back, podcast friends. And today's episode is going to be the third part of a three-part series. So 2 episodes ago, we talked about what actually causes someone to become diabetic. The last episode, we talked about what exactly is diabetes. And today, we're going to be talking about what you can actually do to prevent, stop, or reverse type 2 diabetes. And yes, this can be reversed. It is not a chronic condition like your doctors and drug companies are trying to tell you, but it's because they can't do anything with medications to cure your diabetes. You're the only one that can do this. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. So first, I'm just going to recap a little bit about what we talked about in the last 2 episodes, just to bring everybody up to speed. So first, what is diabetes? Remember, diabetes is not just a condition of having high blood glucose. It's actually a condition of having too high of insulin levels for too long, and this causes insulin resistance. And this is a huge thing because the drug companies and food companies want you to think it's only because of having a high blood sugar, because now they've got something they can do. They have medicine that can bring your blood sugar down, or the food companies can just tell you to keep eating the same old stuff you're eating, just eat less of it. Both of these are lies. Both of these are not correct at all. The only reason drug companies tell you that is because it just so happens the way that their medications bring your blood glucose down is by raising your insulin levels, making your pancreas produce even more. So it actually makes diabetes worse. That's why you cannot use medications to do this. Use medications for a little bit until you can get your nutrition under control, and then you'll be weaning off of those. So first, what is diabetes? Like we said, it is not high blood glucose. It's having too high insulin for too long. And that's what we want to do, is have you eat the kind of stuff that keeps your insulin levels low. So what is insulin? Insulin is an energy storage hormone. That's what it does. Is there's 2 different forms of energy that our bodies can use. We can use glucose or we can use fat. And so when our insulin levels are high, that's because our glucose levels are high, and it's going to make us use our glucose for our energy. But we're not supposed to be doing that all the time. We're only supposed to use the glucose for our fight or flight energy. When your insulin levels are low, that forces you to burn the fat out of your fat cells and use that for energy. And that's the way we're supposed to be doing it. So just like I said, since there's 2 sources of energy, glucose and fat, there's also 2 storage areas in our bodies for these 2 different things. For the glucose, that's stored in our liver. That's the main place. So it takes all these glucose molecules, puts them together like a little glucose brick. And when your insulin levels are high, that's what makes you form glycogen, which is what these little glucose bricks are, and then store that in your liver. And only about 10% of your liver has this glycogen. So you don't have very many glucose stores. And that's because you're only supposed to use glucose for your fight or flight energy. That's the only time you're going to be using that. All the other times, you're supposed to be using the fat out of your fat cells. So when your insulin levels are high, it causes you to store fat. When your insulin levels are low, it causes you to burn fat. And that's what you want to do. You want to keep your insulin levels low through the majority of the day, the majority of your life. Keep your insulin levels very, very low so you can constantly be burning the fat out of your fat cells. Then when you eat, you can replenish those. But you'll see that that's not what we do. What we do now, ever since our dietary guidelines changed, where at first they didn't realize that they were lying to you, but now they know they're lying to you, telling you that eating fat is what makes you fat and eating carbs is what's supposed to be good for you. And this is wrong. And this is why we see the type 2 diabetes that we're seeing. That's why we're seeing the obesity that we're seeing. And that's why we're seeing the metabolic syndrome that we're seeing. These have all skyrocketed just since our dietary guidelines came out. So where does our body store this energy? Like I said, it takes these glucose molecules, puts them together into what's called glycogen and stores that in 10% of your liver and 1% of each of your skeletal muscles. And that's why it's in skeletal muscles too, because this is supposed to be your fight or flight. Your fat energy is stored all over in your subcutaneous fat cells. So that's why your cells are there. It's actually supposed to be there to help you store your energy. However, that's what it does at first. But when you continuously fill your fat cells, now your body starts running out of places to put all this stored fat because of all these carbohydrates that you're eating that's getting converted into fat. Then it starts storing around your organs, and that's when we start seeing the organ damage. So the key is, don't let your fat cells go so full that you're starting to store it around your organs. And what you want to do is have your insulin levels high to store fat, and then get your insulin levels down low again so you can burn that for energy. And so what makes your insulin levels rise? What makes it go high in the first place? What makes your insulin levels go high is having glucose in your blood. That's why when glucose is high in your blood, your body has to make insulin to get the glucose out of your body or out of your bloodstream. Remember, it doesn't just make glucose disappear. It actually turns it into fat and stores it. So we have glycogen stores and we have fat stores. The glycogen is supposed to be there for our fight or flight. So when you get stressed out, if something happens, your body releases a hormone called cortisol, and that's your stress hormone. And what this does is that through a series of steps, it causes your liver to break those glycogen stores out and put that glucose in your body so you can have fast, very quick energy. But what's supposed to happen is when that stress is gone, your glucose levels come back down, so your insulin levels come back down, and then you start using the fat out of your fat cells again. And so that's why glucose is for your immediate needs and the fat is for all the other needs. So we just talked about what happens when you get stressed. That's why the glucose goes in your blood, but it's only supposed to be for a short amount of time. Then when you eat food, what your body does is it takes this food and it breaks it down from all the macronutrients, the stuff that's in your meat, your fruits, your vegetables, all that stuff. And hopefully you're not eating this man-made food, because that's nothing but solid glucose and toxins. But what happens is you'll eat the food, it goes to your intestines. Your intestines see the food that you eat, but your bloodstream does not. All your bloodstream sees is the tiny building blocks that each of these foods are made out of. So when you eat protein, all your blood sees are the amino acids that your intestines broke that down into. So your body can reconform all those amino acids to make whatever proteins it needs. When your body eats fat, all your bloodstream sees is fatty acids. So it can use all these fatty acids for all the multiple things that your body does with fatty acids. Makes every single cell membrane in your body is made out of fat. You use fat for your temperature regulation. You use fat to protect your joints. You use fat to make some of your hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. And the biggest thing that fat does, besides all that, is it's a very, very good energy source. There's 9 calories per gram versus only 4 calories per gram for glucose. So it's very high in energy, and we have fat stores all over our body because that's what we're supposed to be using for our energy source all the time. However, like you'll see, we've changed that, and now people think they're supposed to use glucose for their energy source all the time, and that's why they're becoming more and more obese, and that's why type 2 diabetes is running crazy rampant. So what happens when you eat? That's what it does. Your intestines break all this food down into the building blocks and then puts that in your bloodstream. So where's all this glucose that's coming from that's in your body? You got to remember that I just now said that proteins get broken down to amino acids, fat gets broken down to fatty acids, and all carbohydrates, which means all plant-based foods, all of them have the basic building block of glucose. So anytime you eat any kind of plant-based food, you're making your glucose levels go up. And it's even worse when you're eating this man-made junk that they feed you out of the box, balls, bag, and can. That makes your blood glucose go extremely high and makes your insulin levels go extremely high. And that is what's causing all of our insulin resistance. So that's what we want to get you stayed away from. What you'll find out is when you eat protein, when you eat fat, your insulin levels do not go up at all. Fat has nothing to do with your insulin levels as far as that. Protein, when you eat that, there's a little bit of protein when you eat the meat. That's going to make your insulin go up just a tiny bit. And I think that's probably because of, like we said, every one of your skeletal muscles has 1% of glycogen that can only be used for that one muscle cell. So when you eat meat, you're going to be getting a little bit of glucose, but not very much at all. The biggest one is carbohydrates. That's the one that makes your insulin go high. And the man-made ultra-processed carbohydrates are by far the worst to keep your insulin levels very, very high. So how do we reverse type 2 diabetes? What we do is, like we said, you have to keep your blood glucose low because that's going to keep your insulin levels low. That's the important thing. It's not just keeping your blood glucose levels low, because if you only focus on that part, that's what they've been doing all the way up until now, the drug companies and food companies, because that's all the focus on is the blood glucose being low, and they don't even pay attention to the insulin, and the insulin's what's actually killing us. And I actually did a whole podcast on this, on podcast number 34, called What Determines Whether We Store Fat or Burn It for Energy. So you can go back to that. So I won't go into that right now. You can go back and listen to podcast 34 if you want to. So how do we get our insulin levels to stay low? By far, there's two different ways. We just said, how do you get glucose in your body? One way is by stress. Okay, if you have a fight or flight syndrome. So if you're in constant stress, that is horrible for your body. You're constantly putting glucose in your blood. You're constantly keeping your insulin levels low. It's causing inflammation all over your body. Stress can make you very, very sick. So if you are stressed out all the time, that's something else that you really need to get under control and learn how to relax and bring those levels down. But by far, the biggest way that you put glucose into your bloodstream is by the types of food that you eat. And this is all your own choice of what you eat. You have 100% control over that. So when you decrease stress and you quit eating all these carbohydrates, you're going to keep your blood glucose low. And when you keep your blood glucose low, you're going to keep your insulin levels low. So what food and drinks should you totally avoid? It's really crazy, but what you need to do is realize that the food pyramid that we've been taught since our new dietary guidelines came out in 1977, it tells you that we're supposed to have the majority of our nutrition is supposed to come from grains, breads, pastas, all these carbohydrates. It is a lie, and that is what's killing us. Our food pyramid should be totally turned upside down and take the whole carb section totally off of that. That's the way we should be doing it, because eating the way that they're eating it or the way they're telling us is making us extremely sick and making all kinds of organ damage and loss of limb and loss of life. So the way you do it is you quit eating carbohydrates. So the types of food to avoid, we just said man-made foods, because man-made foods, all these foods that are in the box, bottles, bags, and cans, these are made up of ultra-processed carbohydrates, which means they take these plants, these seeds, they grind them down, get rid of all the good phytonutrients, get rid of all the fiber, and all you're left with is powdered glucose. That's what flour is. So it just, these ultra-processed carbohydrates are just nothing but pure glucose, and that's in man-made food. But on top of that, in man-made food, they put sugar and high fructose corn syrup in almost everything, because they know that you like that taste of sweet in your mouth, and they know that sugar does not satisfy any kind of nutrient value in your body at all. So your body doesn't get any nutrients. So it makes you stay hungry, because your body gives you a hunger signal when it needs nutrients. If you keep eating all this sugar and high fructose corn syrup and all this man-made food, you're not giving the body the nutrients. And so it's always making you hungry. And that's why you tend to eat all throughout the day. And again, I did another podcast on this, and podcast number 6 is what is fructose and why is it poison? And the reason I say that is because, remember, sugar is actually 50% glucose and 50% fructose. We're talking about glucose in this podcast, but you can go back to listen about how fructose is poison by listening to episode number 6, and I talk all about that. The other thing that's in man-made foods, besides the ultra-processed carbs and the sugar and the high fructose corn syrup, are vegetable and seed oils. And these things are toxic. They are horrible for you. And again, they did a whole podcast on this, podcast number 21, are vegetable and seed oils bad for you? Spoiler alert, they're not just bad, they are horrible. They cause inflammation all throughout your body. You've got to stay away from those things. So anytime you go out to eat and eat fried food out, I guarantee they're going to be using these vegetable and seed oils because they're dirt cheap. And that's why the food companies use them as well. It doesn't matter whether it's killing you or not. So the types of foods that you need to avoid eating in order to prevent, reverse your type 2 diabetes. Avoid eating any foods that have an ingredient label that has more than 3 or 4 ingredients on it, because I guarantee all the other ingredients are in there. Those are going to be the ones, these are going to be all the chemicals that they put in there. Or it may be one of the multiple different names for sugar, so you don't realize that it's sugar that you're eating. And so besides this, there's also avoid anything that has, look on the label, if it has maltodextrin in it, if it has sugar in it, high fructose corn syrup, vegetable oils, seed oils, flour. If any of those ingredients are in an ingredient list of something you want to eat, put it back on the shelf and keep looking. That's very important. Also, beware of your condiments. Again, they're trying to tell you that fat is what makes you fat. So they have all these low fat foods that are out there that we don't need low fat foods. We actually need high fat foods, just not vegetable and seed oil fats. And when you look at condiments, take the exact same, just pick something like salad dressing and pick the exact same brand, the exact same type. So the same food manufacturer will make it. You're going to have a regular salad dressing, a low-fat salad dressing, and a fat-free salad dressing. The exact same one. And when you look at the ingredient list, you're going to find out that the more fat they take out, the more sugar they put in, which is horrible because fat isn't the problem at all and sugar is. So they try to get you to eat their stuff by saying it's low fat, but then they're killing you with all the sugar. And if you see any ingredients that you've never heard of, you don't know, put that back on the shelf. Chances are that's going to be chemicals, like we said. And they put all kinds of chemicals in these man-made foods. And chemicals cause all kinds of inflammation in our body because our body recognizes this is a foreign substance. This should not be in our bodies. It's not a nutrient. So it sets up an inflammatory response to get rid of it. So some of the chemicals that you're going to see artificial coloring, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavoring, preservatives. There's all kinds of chemicals that you're putting in these food that you're putting in your body that's causing inflammation and obesity. So stay away from those. As far as beverages to avoid, all fruit juices. Fruit juices are nothing but sugar, nothing but glucose, fructose. There's nothing good about them. Please stay away from these. These cause obesity. They cause type 2 diabetes. They cause inflammation. They cause everything that makes you sick. So stay away from all fruit juices, all soda pops, even diet soda. And I've done a podcast on this also. Even diet soda, what they found is just by putting something sweet in your mouth, your body automatically is trying to get rid of that. So it raises your insulin levels. So as soon as you have something sweet in your mouth, even if you put it in your mouth and spit it back out, you've already started raising your insulin levels because your body's getting ready for it. So the key to all this is quit thinking that the taste of sweet is good and you got to have it, because really what you should be doing is think, as soon as you taste something sweet, think this is poison. This is what's making me sick. And you want to change your thoughts, just like my wife and I have been talking about. You've got to change your thoughts. Instead of saying something sweet, oh, you've got to have it, say something, this is sweet, this is bad for my body, and I don't want it. You've got to make that thought change. Otherwise, you're going to be going right down the same path as millions of other people in the world are going down, with the obesity, then type 2 diabetes, then organ damage, organ failure, and death. And that is the process that you're going to go with if you continue to think that something sweet is something good for you. Smoothies. Everybody thinks smoothies are all great. Smoothies are not great. Smoothies also have a ton of sugar. They're all made of plant-based things, again, which means glucose. So when you're eating a smoothie, you're putting nothing but glucose, and now it's liquid glucose. So that gets in your body. And again, this raises your insulin levels and increases your chance of getting insulin resistance. So no, smoothies are not healthy. Milk. If you're talking about whole milk, that is fine. As long as you're not lactose intolerant, whole milk is fine. But stay far away from chocolate milk. Stay away from low-fat milk, 1% milk, 2% milk, fat-free milk. Stay away from all those, because the more fat they take out, the more chemicals they put in. And you've got to stay away from all these chemicals. So when you go shopping, the easiest way to do this is totally avoid the inner aisles of the shopping center, of the grocery store. That's where all these man-made foods are. What you want to do is switch over to just shop in the periphery of the store. That's where you're going to find all your deli meats, your real meat, your real fruits, your real vegetables, your real dairy. That's where you need to shop. Stay away from the inner aisles, because that's what's killing us. So what should you eat? You want to eat God-made, natural, real meat, real fruit, and real vegetables. These are called single ingredient items. You're not going to go pick up an apple and see this huge list on there of all the ingredients. You're not going to pick up a good marbled fatty ribeye steak with all this ingredient list. It's not going to happen. These are single ingredients, and that's really what you want to stick with. As far as fat, you want to eat healthy fat, healthy proteins, vitamins, and minerals. That's all you need. Healthy fat, protein, vitamin, minerals. You do not ever have to eat a carbohydrate. Your body does not need them. There are essential fats, fatty acids, meaning your body needs those, but you have to get it from eating because your body doesn't make them. There's essential amino acids, means your body doesn't make them. You have to get it from the food you eat. But there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. It doesn't exist because we don't need that. If our glycogen stores go low because we just had a fight or flight experience, our bodies can turn fat into glucose so that can store that back in our glycogen store. It's called gluconeogenesis. It's the forming of glucose from a non-carbohydrate source. It does the same thing with protein. If you need it, it can break protein down, turn that into glucose so you can replenish your stores. It's not so you can live off it for energy because you're supposed to be using your fat for your energy source. So what kinds of fats? We just said there's 2 essential fatty acids, which means your body doesn't make them. You have to get them from the food you eat. So that's omega-3s and omega-6s. Omega-3s produce your anti-inflammatory prostaglandins. Omega-6s cause your inflammatory prostaglandins. And you need a good balance of both, because if you do get something, if you step on a nail or you cut yourself or you're in a stressful situation, you need to have this inflammatory prostaglandins to help get you through that situation. But you also need the anti-inflammatory prostaglandins to balance those out. So you're just not all these omega-6s. You don't want a lot of that. So where do you get your omega-3s? Where do you get these anti-inflammatories? You get this from animal fat, okay? Animal fat, especially grass-fed beef, that has a very good ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. So you usually want a ratio of around 3 omega-6s to 1 omega-3, or maybe 6 or 7 omega-6 to omega-3. And that's a good ratio. And that's what you're going to get in the fat of animals that you eat, especially if it's grass-fed beef. So grass-fed beef is good. It has a good omega-3, omega-6 ratio. Fatty fish is very good for you, like salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies. Those are good source of omega-3s. Eggs are a fantastic source. The whole egg. You want the yolk, you don't want the white. This is a superfood. It's almost like breast milk. It's just got everything that you need. It is a superfood. Then there's things like walnuts or chia seeds and flax seeds. Those are all good and high in omega-3s also. So that's where you get your anti-inflammatory omega-3s. Animal fat, fish, the fresh fish we just talked about, eggs, walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds. Now, with the omega-6, and again, these are the ones that make your inflammatory prostaglandins, but a little bit of that you want. What you don't want is the kind that you have with vegetable and seed oils, because vegetable and seed oils, and remember I said with animals, the animal fat, a good grass-fed beef, it's going to be somewhere around 6 to 7 omega-6s to 1 omega-3. When you eat these vegetable and seed oils, they go up to around 50 of omega-6s to 1 omega-3. So they are way, way overloaded on the inflammatory side of prostaglandins. That's just one reason that all these vegetable and seed oils cause inflammation in your body, besides all the chemicals that it uses to get the oil out of these vegetables and seeds. The chemicals also cause inflammation in your body. So you want to stay away from vegetable and seed oils at all costs. So the good animal fat, we talked about it. There's fatty beef or pork. You want a good fatty beef because that's where you're going to get your omega-3s. And then you can also have butter, bacon, eggs. Go crazy. You can have all that you want because that's a good amount of omega-3s to omega-6 ratios. So those are the good fats. Good fatty beef or pork, butter, bacon, and eggs. Now, if you are obese and you're trying to lose some of the fat out of your fat cells, then you might want to tend a little bit more towards the leaner meats like your chicken and turkey. And again, you can switch it around, make it interesting, but kind of go heavy on the chicken and turkey while you're burning the fat out of your own fat stores. So you don't really need to put the fat from an animal food in there, except for it's not going to hurt and it still gives you a lot of your vitamins. even your fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K that everybody's so low on because there's no fat in this man-made food. You get those when you eat animal meat because that has those fat soluble vitamins in them as well. So what do you want to do? You want to use natural God-made carbohydrates. If you are going to eat a carbohydrate, just eat a little bit. That's going to be your real fruits and real vegetables, and just eat them about like you'd eat a condiment. So your main meal is going to be your meat, whether it's going to be a lean meat or whether it's going to be a fatty meat. That's up to what you're wanting to do with it. Fatty meats, if you're needing the energy, if you're at the weight that you want to be, and stick more to the leaner meats if you're obese and you're trying to use your own fat cells. So now, as far as healthy oils, we've already talked about the horrible vegetable seed oils you want to avoid, but the healthy oils that you can have are extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil. These three are very good because they already have oil in them. It doesn't take a bunch of chemicals to get the oil out of here, and there's some omega-3s in there as well. So extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil. And again, when you eat these kind of oils, that's going to be, when that's in your food, that's going to help you absorb these fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, ADEC. And that's why we had so many people during the COVID. A lot of them were coming in and they were dying because their vitamin D levels are so low. So we were giving everybody extra vitamin D when they were coming to the hospital. And again, when you use the real fruits and the real vegetables, still just keep it to a minimum. Just use it about like you would do a condiment. As far as what you should drink, okay, we already talked about the horrible stuff you should not drink, but what you should drink is just plain water, unsweet coffee, and unsweet tea. Then if you do want carbonated water, there are some good flavored or unflavored carbonated waters. There's things like LaCroix, Bubbly, Waterloo, Pellegrino, Topo Chico. There's a bunch of them, but there are also some that are flavored, but they're flavored with things like sucralose or some of these artificial flavorings. You want to stay away from those because just like we said, the deal with artificial flavoring or the artificial sweeteners, when you put something, even on diet sodas, when you put something sweet in your mouth, again, it automatically makes your insulin levels go up because your body's getting ready to start ingesting these carbohydrates. Whether you actually have anything or not, it's going to make you hungry because what happens, you get the sugar in your mouth, your insulin levels go up, that makes your glucose levels go down, which makes you more hungry. And so it tends to make you eat more. And that's what all the studies have shown. Anybody, when they do studies on diet sodas, they find out it has nothing. It doesn't help weight loss at all. It just makes the person more hungry. So that's why you want to learn. And then, like we said earlier, stick with whole milk. If you want milk, that's fine. If you're not lactose intolerant, milk is good. Just stay away from the chocolate milk. Stay away from the low fat, no fat, 1%, 2%. Stay away from all of that. So what I really want you to do, and I'm going to be wrapping this up, I know I've been long, is I want you to keep this very, very simple. It really isn't hard. All I'm asking you to do is eat the way we used to back before the 1970s, back before our dietary guidelines came out. That's the way we want to eat. You want to avoid all man-made food, avoid all these beverages that have all this sugar and artificial sweeteners in it. Look at labels. If you are going to eat a food with a label, make sure there's going to be less than 3 or 4 ingredients on that label. And again, I did a podcast number 22 on food label ingredients to avoid. So if you want it more in depth, you can go listen to episode 22. The other thing I want you to do is realize that you want to get the taste of sweet out of your mouth. You don't want something sweet in your mouth because it's going to make you hungry and it's going to want to make you eat more. And that is going to be raising your insulin levels, causing insulin resistance, which is going to put you into a diabetic state. And that's what we're trying to defeat with all of this. So what you do eat, you eat real, natural, God-made food, real animal protein, real fruits, and real vegetables, but just a little of the fruits and vegetables. So that's it. Don't make this hard. By any means, don't make this hard. Just eat real meat, real fruit, real vegetables, and stay away from all the man-made crud that's killing us. And if you really want to supercharge this, we call it the good news, NEWSS. The N stands for nutrition. That's what we just talked about. This is kind of nutrition, real meat, real fruit, real vegetables. And E stands for exercise. The very minimum, the very, very minimum that 100% of the people should do is walk. Walking is so good for you. And I've already done podcasts on this. If you are so obese that you cannot walk, or you can't walk very far, go to the nearest swimming pool, whether it's at a gym, whether it's in your residential area, wherever. Get in the water and walk there. So now the water will help keep you a little bit buoyant, and you're not going to be so hard on your joints, on your knees, on your hips, and on your ankles. But you've got to walk. You've got to move at the very minimum. Don't worry about all the other exercise. That will come as the weight comes off. You feel better. You feel more energetic. And that's when you're going to start doing more than just walking. But at the very beginning, just walk. The W is for water. We already talked about water is so important. You should take your ideal body weight, not your actual body weight, but your ideal body weight, the weight that you know you should be at. Take that weight, divide that by 2, and that's the number of ounces of pure water you should drink every single day, because our bodies are 65% water. We need water for everything, and most of us walk around dehydrated. So water is good. The S is for sleep. You've got to get good sleep. I've done podcasts on these also. Good sleep is very, very important to the health of your body. And then the last S, because I spell news, NEWSS, the other S is for sunshine. You've got to get out in the sun and not wearing sunscreens. People have gone way overboard on sunscreens. Those block the good rays of sun that we need. There are very, very good ultraviolet rays that our skin needs. We need the red light. We need the blue light. We need all these. And when you use sunscreens, it keeps it from getting into our skin. And that's what you want. You don't want to burn. You do want to get out in the sun, but you don't want to burn. So just come back in, just do small amounts until your skin starts getting used to it. And then you can stay out longer and longer. But just go out in the sun, get natural sunlight, and it will do wonders for your body. So I know I'm going along. I hope I didn't confuse you. I hope you understand. But seriously, keep this very simple. If it doesn't look like God made it, if it's not a real meat, real fruit, or real vegetable, or water, just don't eat it. Make sure that you start teaching your thoughts. You teach your brain to think when you taste something sweet, that is poison, because that is poison. And again, you can go back and I'll explain all that. I already said in episode 6 of why is fructose and why is it poison, and that will explain it. So that's all I've got today. I hope this helps. I really want everybody to understand that this is what you need to do to get healthy. Keep your insulin levels low, and that way you can burn your own fat. The way you do that is quit eating carbohydrates and putting glucose in your blood. So for now, thank you so much again for listening. Have a fantastic week. And remember, always make simple, healthy choices to live a quality life. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button below and be sure to tell someone else who may want to change their health path as well. And don't forget, you can also purchase my book, Your Plate is Your Fate, on Amazon or Audible. And if you do, please leave a review.